Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into something absolutely massive. I mean, it's literally the lifeblood of an entire subcontinent. You know, when we talk about India, we usually picture these booming tech hubs or just massive industrial growth. But actually, the real story, the actual foundation that dictates its economy, its culture, and honestly, its future, is right there in the dirt. So we're going to explore the roots of India through its agriculture, the unique rhythm of its seasons, and the really dramatic reforms that have shaped its fields. 2/3. Just take a second and think about that. 2/3 of India's entire population is engaged in agricultural activities. Imagine walking down the street and 2 out of every 3 people you meet are directly tied to this one single sector. That's wild, right? This isn't just some tiny slice of the economy, it's a primary activity sustaining over 1 billion people. It produces almost all the food consumed in the country, but as you'll see, its reach goes way, way beyond the dining table. So here's a question straight from our source material for you. Can you name some industries based on agricultural raw material? Seriously, think about it for a second. Because agriculture is so much more than just food. Cotton is out there fueling massive textile mills. Sugarcane is driving sugar and ethanol production. And rubber sustains global manufacturing. These fields are the absolute bedrock of massive international industries. Okay, here's our quick roadmap for this explainer. Number 1, how India farms. 2, the 3 harvest seasons. 3, crops that feed millions. 4, beyond just food. And finally, number 5, reforming the fields. Let's get right into it. Section 1, how India farms, from subsistence to commercial. So farming in India definitely isn't a monolith. Methods range from hyper-commercial to incredibly primitive, basically evolving over thousands of years based on the local environment and cultural practices. To really get a feel for the primitive side, let's look at a girl named Rinja, who lives on the outskirts of Difu in Assam. Her family practices primitive subsistence farming. Basically, they clear, slash, and burn a small patch of land, just using super basic tools and family labor. Rinja actually helps irrigate the fields with a simple bamboo canal that taps a nearby spring. They are 100% dependent on the natural monsoon and the soil's natural fertility. But, when that fertility inevitably drops off, the family just has to pack up and move on to clear a fresh patch of land, leaving nature to slowly heal the old one. And get this whole slash and burn technique, it's not just an Indian thing. It is a really fascinating global survival strategy. Down in Mexico, they call it milpa. Over in Brazil, it's roca. In Indonesia, ladang. In Vietnam, ray. And in the northeastern states of India, exactly where Rinja lives, it's famously known as juming. I just think it's incredible how totally isolated cultures across the planet came up with the exact same ecological response to their environments. But of course, as populations explode, farming has to adapt. On the left here, we've got intensive subsistence farming. This happens when there's intense population pressure. Because of what's called the right of inheritance, land just keeps getting chopped up among successive generations, leaving these tiny, barely economical plots. Yet farmers have to somehow wring maximum output from this tiny space using crazy amounts of manual labor and biochemical inputs just to survive. Now, contrast that with commercial farming on the right. This is purely market-focused. We're talking huge land holdings, high-yielding variety or HYV seeds, and heavy chemical fertilizers to maximize productivity for pure profit. Moving on to Section 2, the 3 harvest seasons, the rhythm of the earth. Because, let's face it, no matter how high-tech your farm is, you're still a servant to the weather. India's crazy diversity is perfectly mirrored in how it farms, structured around 3 very distinct seasons. First up is Rabi, sown in the crisp winter, harvested in summer. The success of Rabi crops like wheat and mustard completely relies on winter rain brought in by western temperate cyclones. Then you've got Kharif, which is entirely dictated by the onset of the monsoon. Sown with the heavy rains and harvested in autumn, this gives us staples like paddy and cotton. And lastly, Zaid. This one's a really short, fast season tucked right between Rabi and Kharif during the scorching summer months. It's absolutely perfect for watermelons, cucumbers, and fodder crops. Which brings us to Section 3, crops that feed millions, India's staples. So understanding those seasons really sets the stage for the monumental food crops that sustain India and honestly a huge chunk of the rest of the world too. India's global footprint here is just staggering. They're second only to China in rice production. Rice is the absolute staple food for the majority of the country. It's a quintessential Kharif crop, and it's super picky about its environment. It demands high heat, above 25 degrees Celsius, high humidity, and a ton of rain, like over 100 centimeters annually. Now, let's pit India's 2 heavyweights against each other. While rice totally dominates the rain-soaked east, The coasts and the delta regions, wheat rules the cooler north and northwest, places like Punjab and Haryana. Wheat is a rabi crop. It wants a cool growing season, bright sunshine when it's time to ripen, and way less rain, only about 50 to 75 centimeters evenly spread out. It's a geographical divide that perfectly illustrates just how wildly varied India's climate actually is. All right, Section 4, Beyond Just Food, Cash Crops and Raw Materials. So, as we touched on earlier, farming isn't just about keeping people fed, it's a massive industrial engine. Exactly 12% of the country's total cropped area is dedicated to one very specific slice of the pie, oilseeds. We're talking groundnut, which alone is about half of the major oilseeds produced, along with mustard, coconut, and soybean. Now sure, they're mostly used for cooking oil, but these seeds are incredibly versatile. They're the literal raw materials used to produce everyday stuff like soaps, cosmetics, and ointments. Then we have the absolute giants of plantation agriculture, tea and coffee. These are highly capital-intensive operations that act as the direct bridge between farming and global industry. Initially brought in by the British, Indian tea thrives in the deep, fertile, completely frost-free climates of Assam and Darjeeling. It requires a ton of cheap, skilled manual labor. And Indian coffee? It is famous worldwide for its quality, specifically the Arabica variety, which was actually brought all the way from Yemen and first planted on the Baba Budan Hills. And you know, we absolutely can't talk industry without talking fiber. Have you ever heard of sericulture? It is the incredibly intricate process of rearing silkworms. Unlike cotton or jute, which you grow in the dirt, natural silk comes directly from the cocoons of these worms, and they have to be fed a very specific diet of green mulberry leaves. And speaking of fiber, India is also a powerhouse for jute. They call it the golden fiber. It grows beautifully in the renewed floodplains of West Bengal and gets turned into everything from gunny bags to carpets. Finally, Section 5, Reforming the Fields, Securing the Future. Okay, we've looked at the crops and the techniques, but we have to talk about the human element. When you have a population this massive, just using the land over and over without upgrading your technology or your institutions is a total recipe for disaster. Right after independence, abolishing the old zamindari system was priority number one. But the real tech leap? That happened in the 1960s and 70s with the Green Revolution, which brought in new package technology, and the White Revolution for milk. But since that concentrated wealth in just a few areas, the 80s and 90s saw a shift toward comprehensive, widespread land development. Fast forward to today, and the focus is heavily on modern safety nets, things like crop insurance against droughts, Grameen banks, and the Kisan credit card. These are absolute game changers, protecting everyday farmers from getting squeezed by middlemen. But honestly, maybe the most profound reform didn't even come from a government mandate. It came from a spiritual awakening. Just picture this. Vinoba Bhave, the spiritual heir to Mahatma Gandhi, is on this huge walking tour across India. He stops in a village in Telangana, and these desperate landless villagers literally plead with him for just a little bit of land so they can survive. Bhave couldn't promise the government would do anything right away. But right then and there, in that exact meeting, a local man named Sriram Chandra Reddy stands up. Out of nowhere, he voluntarily offers 80 acres of his own personal land to be given to 80 landless villagers. That one single incredible act of generosity, it spread like wildfire. It sparked the Bhudan, or land gift movement. Vinoba Bhave took this idea and traveled all over India. Pretty soon, wealthy landowners and zamindars were offering up whole villages to the landless in a movement called Gramdan. Started purely through spiritual persuasion and voluntary distribution, it achieved this massive, profound institutional shift without a single drop of violence. It absolutely earned its title as the Bloodless Revolution. Which kind of leaves us hanging with this massive, looming question. We've journeyed from primitive slash-and-burn farming to the high-tech green revolution and all the way to voluntary land redistribution. But the story is far from over, with over 60% of India's population still depending on this sector and family farms shrinking every generation under the weight of population pressure. What exactly is the next agricultural revolution going to look like? Is it going to be driven by AI and technology, a return to ecological roots, or some crazy new institutional reform? It is an incredibly complex puzzle, and honestly, the answer is going to shape the future of a billion lives. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep analyzing, and I'll catch you in the next one.